Today, I would like to share a piece of my heart. A journey into a pit of hell I only knew as depression and addiction. It has been over 8 years since my last drink of alcohol, but the path to real recovery has been a surprisingly painful, fulfilling, terrifying, and definitely a life changing one. Join me today as I reflect on this incredible journey from darkness to awakening. 10 years ago, I was faced with the haunting shadow of addiction and depression. Each step felt like a heavy burden, and the road ahead seemed uncertain, dangerous, and very scary. The mess I had created for myself seemed too great for me to deal with. I felt alone, misunderstood, confused, and very disappointed. I did not know it at the time, but the fight against alcoholism was one that I was never meant to fight alone, much less one that I could actually win. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that healing begins when we surrender to our most vulnerable selves. Admitting my struggles and seeking help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was the most courageous act of strength I've ever displayed. It marked the beginning of my journey towards sobriety and the pursuit of genuine happiness. The issue I had, which I believe many struggling with addiction can identify with, is believing that we need to understand our addiction before we can overcome it. I drove myself close to insanity trying to figure out why I drank after swearing off the bottle, and meaning it with every inch of my heart. I could not understand why I was so powerless, so unable to control my own behaviors. You see, I thought my problem was a drinking problem. Stop drinking, problem solved, right? It was not until after multiple failed attempts at staying sober on my own that I began to wonder if the issue was not truly a deeper one. It was at this moment, after trying my way, my will, that I learned my first lesson: surrender. The first lesson: addiction is a bully. In recovery, we hear a lot the word surrender. And I always had an issue with the word surrender because in my head, it sounds a lot like defeat. Perhaps it is the fact that I spend way too much time playing video games, or perhaps it is because my internal struggles have always felt like a fight. Whatever the reason, accepting the word surrender did not agree with me in the beginning because it felt like I was giving up a fight. I thought it was my responsibility to figure out my issues, so I tried every way that I can think of. I tried to control my drinking, stop drinking altogether, only drinking beer, only drinking wine, only drinking on the weekends. The obsessive thoughts and all the planning were endless. Whether I was thinking about drinking or thinking about not drinking, I was still thinking about alcohol. And once I began thinking about alcohol, it was only a matter of time before I lost that fight and rationalized another drink. It was like an incense that just penetrated my brain. Because you see, addiction is like a bully. Your typical Disney Channel middle school, early 2000s type bully. And this bully will come to your mind, taunt you, and every day will tell you to meet him at some park after school. And this is where the insanity comes in because day after day, we show up. We know we're going to lose. It has happened before. We've tried it our way countless times. We tried fighting the good fight, save face somehow, only to end up back in another detox bed. But we kept showing up until one day we realized, oh man, I can just go home after school. I don't have to go in and face that fight and face that bully. I can take a different route. But taking our drug of choice is like taking a loan from the mafia, right? It offers instant but temporary relief. But when the debt comes due, it's a million times worse. Trying to do things my way only made me feel more insane, deeper into the hell of my own making. I was experiencing severe symptoms of withdrawals, but will not go to the hospital out of shame of being admitted yet again. They already knew me by my first name. I realized that surrendering was not giving up. It was yielding the fight to a player that is greater than me, one that can actually win on my behalf. Surrender is about releasing the illusion of control that often accompanies addiction. It's understanding that trying to control the addiction only perpetuates the problem, and true freedom lies in letting go. Of course, when this happens, our ego goes crazy, screams and freak out because it feels out of control. My own ego has been my worst enemy in this journey, which brings me to my second lesson. You cannot do it alone. I heard a quote once before. The mind is a dangerous neighborhood. Do not venture in alone. You may have heard that phrase before, but have you really thought about it? Ours is a disease of the mind. The compulsion, planning, overthinking, and powerlessness we all live with, it's within our minds. To try to mend the root of the problem alone was not only terrifying, it was impossible for me. I tried therapy, medication, yoga, church, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, you name it, I've been to it. They will all work for a while, and each taught me an important lesson, but none could keep me sober. After a while, the itch for the drink would come back, and a drink would start to sound like a good idea yet again. It was when I found a group of people who acted and thought just like me that I discovered that addiction is a spiritual malady, not simply a physical one. Through Alcoholics Anonymous, I discovered a fellowship and, more importantly, a way to stay sober. Fellowship provides a space where individuals can connect with each other who have faced similar struggles. This shared understanding creates a unique bond that fosters empathy, validation, and a sense of belonging. It's comforting to know that you're not alone in your experiences. With the help of a sponsor, I began to work on becoming a better person and to live sober. Through friends and family who love and support me, I learned to live life on life's terms, one day at a time. Addiction can feel isolating, but fellowship breaks down those walls of isolation. When you're part of a supportive community, you tap into the collective strength of the group. Facing challenges become more manageable when you have a network of people who genuinely care about your well-being. I know that if you're doing sobriety or are still abusing substances, all of this can sound overwhelming or maybe oversimplify. But here's the good news. Lesson 3, you only have to do it for 24 hours because it is one day at a time. One day at a time was one of those AA slogans I used to call bumper sticker garbage because I hated it. I had spent years of my life overthinking, planning for my next drink, obsessing over my addiction, and being a complete slave to alcohol. Living in the moment or one day at a time was not an obtainable task for me. I was terrified when I learned I could never drink again. I would cry and grieve things that I didn't even have yet, like not even being able to drink champagne at my wedding when I wasn't even dating anyone at the time. I also believed my sobriety was conditional, meaning that if all went well, I could stay sober. But if something bad enough would happen, I would most certainly relapse and drink again. In sobriety, I have experienced tremendous loss and pain. Many of the events of recent years were once on that conditional sobriety list I had created in my head. In early sobriety, I still believed that I was doing all the fighting. So when bad hypothetical things would come up in my head, I did not believe I would be strong enough to handle them sober. This is because I was forgetting the main point. I will not be the one doing any of the fighting myself. The beauty of trusting a higher power and to live one day at a time is that you learn to only focus on the things that you can control. It takes time, and I am still learning to let go of certain things, but whenever I practice this principle, I am always amazed of what I am able to do if I trust God. Worrying about things I could not control was causing me anxiety and pain. When I turn my attention to the things that I can control, my reactions to life, things can become less overwhelming. But life doesn't always deliver a clear message. No, life is sticky, tricky, and sometimes messy. Faith means trusting that I do not have to worry even when I do not know what's next. The last thing I want to share actually takes us back to the beginning and loops us all the way to the end. Lesson 4, We drink to feel normal. Okay, so we've all seen The Matrix, and if not, this is your spoiler warning. But in the movie, Neo is given a choice to learn the truth about his reality or to go back to fake world in the Matrix. Neo obviously takes the red pill and is awakened into the real world. Before I started to drink, I felt like I was living in the Matrix. I always felt anxious, never thought I was good enough, panicked in social situations, had low self esteem, yet was completely obsessed with myself and how others perceive me. I did not know what was wrong with me. All I knew was that it felt like I was playing a game I never got the instructions for. When I found alcohol, it felt like taking the blue pill. I could embrace the world. I did not feel anxious, I could be social, I felt pretty, and I had no anxiety. It was not until the matrix began to break down and I started to lose jobs, get arrested, lose control of my entire life, that I began to consider perhaps taking the red pill might be the easier, softer way. Our drug of choice usually works for us for a while. In many cases, such as my own, it may have even delayed very traumatic mental damage. Alcohol allowed me to run away from my demons, but they were merely kept at bay for a time, doing push ups in the background and waiting for a moment of me being vulnerable, which inevitably always came. Embarking in the journey of sobriety means facing these demons, not run away from them. I once heard a speaker in AA meeting talk about fear and how that acronym can stand for two things. It can either stand for fuck everything and run or face everything and recover. The truth was my demons were not going anywhere. I could move to California, to Paris, to the South Pole, but they would be right there with me in my luggage. I could get a new job, a new boyfriend, millions of temporary fixes that only made the comeback hit of the relapse that much more painful. When I finally accepted suggestions and began to try the things other people have done, I was accepting to take the red pill of my life, to enter reality without the armor of alcohol and face my biggest enemy, myself. And this is the last thing I will say. Embracing light through the shadows is the last lesson. In the tapestry of life, pain and trauma are threads that we often wish to unravel and discard. Yet, what I found is in this journey, these threads hold a profound truth. They are integral to the masterpiece of our true selves. Through adversity, we find our refined selves, and our vulnerabilities strengthen us and make us be more authentic. I mentioned earlier feeling like I did not get the instruction manual of life when I was growing up. I still think this is true. As a toxic life environment, childhood trauma, and mental health issues all prevented me from getting a good education on how to be an adult. Emotionally, I was still 7 years old, and thus I acted accordingly. The 12 steps of AA, therapy, God, and loved ones have given me an instruction manual. And while I am still a long way to go, I learn new things every day. Things I wish to share with you here as we grow up emotionally and spiritually together. As we go through this labyrinth of pain, we encounter moments that test the very core of our being. In those dark hours, we have to confront not only our limitations, but also our limitless potential and resilience for growth. Our wounds become the canvas on which we paint our stories of triumph. Through healing, we transform scars into badges of courage and remind of the strength that resides within. Embracing our true selves through pain and trauma is a reclamation of our narrative. It's a declaration that we will not be defined solely by the hardships that we faced, but by the way we've risen from them. It's an acknowledgement that we are not broken, but rather beautifully complex, capable of empathy, compassion, and a depth of understanding that only those who walk the path of suffering can possess. Our journey has led us through the depths of despair, where the weight of adversity threatened to drown us. But it is in these depths that we discover the seeds of resilience, watered by the tears of growth. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us that no matter how far down the scales we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. There is purpose in the pain we've experienced. We can bring light to those who are still in darkness. Our experiences, though very painful, have carved pathways to self-awareness. They have been the chisel that chips away the layers of societal conditioning, revealing the sculpture of an authentic self underneath. Our own journey through pain and trauma has gifted me with the invaluable knowledge that I am not defined by my scars, but by the radiant spirit that emerges from the depths of my experiences. As I continue to embark in the new phase of my development, it is my hope to bring encouragement to others and spread the light of knowing we are not alone in this. Thank you for joining me in the unveiling of my story. Remember, you are strong, you are brave, and you are beautiful.